Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Vikings Vent Line every Sunday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and podcast feed. Maybe you are discovering this awesome show for the first time and you'd love to be on this episode or want to know more about what the heck this show is. This is Vikings Vent Line. It's a safe space and a spot for every Vikings fan. So if you'd like to come on the show, talk about the offseason, talk about expectations for this season, this is your place. Hit me up. It's VikingsVentLine@gmail.com. Or if you're a recurring regular guest and you've always wanted to be on, I would love to hear from you. VikingsVentLine@gmail.com is the invite to hit me up, and then I can schedule you in to join a show during the regular season. Mackie, Judd, and myself bring on as many Vikings fans as possible right after the Vikings game ends. And then in the off season, I like to host this edition with a couple fans each week just to get their thoughts on what's going on in Vikingsville. So again, if you want to be on a show, hit me up. It's a Vikings Vent Line, I should say, at gmail.com. Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. Appreciate everyone that has listened and subscribed to this podcast. You are awesome. Thank you so much. So appreciate everyone that has done so. And shout out to Quick Trip, too, that sponsors Purple Daily and Vikings Vent Line. All right, let's get our dudes in here. Let's get Adam and Scott. Guys, how we doing? You're making your first trip on to Vent Line. How are we feeling?
Absolutely. Amazing.
Doing great.
Awesome, guys. So, Adam, you told me off, Mike, you're in Hollywood.
Correct.
I've had a few fans on from the LA area. So on Sundays or Vikings game days, where are you going? Are you getting the Sunday ticket? Like, what's your kind of Vikings plan to watch a game all the way in California?
Oh, no. I go to a bar called the Escondite, which is near Skid Row in Los Angeles. Okay. A good friend of mine runs that bar. So I typically go there. He's got the package, and I watch it there. Although it is a bear bar. It's a Chicago theme bar. But they always put Viking games on there, too. So that's my place to go to.
So then you're in enemy territory twice a year at least, right? Like deep into the thick of it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Although I don't have the resentment towards them that I do towards the pack,
Right.
So,
I think that's fair. I think that's
absolutely.
Fair. And then, Scott, are you in Minnesota? Where are you calling from, man?
I'm actually all the way on the other side of the country from upstate New York. So I was born in Wisconsin, grew up in Illinois. I'm Midwesterner by heart, but life transplanted me out here.
Awesome. So we're literally got the Midwest, the West Coast, and East Coast. So all three parts of the country right here. I love that. That's fantastic. Well, guys, let's get into some topics here on Vikings Vent Line. Let's start with this one. Kevin O'Connell entering year 3 here with the Vikings. He signed, I believe, a 4-year contract. So after this season, he'll be entering that final year of his deal. Do you want to see him, Adam? I'll start with you here. Do you want to see Kevin O'Connell extended this summer? Do you want to see an extension happen now? Would you rather the season maybe happen and then take care of it next offseason? What's your kind of timeline to seeing Kevin O'Connell being extended?
I think the latter of what you said. I mean, as much as I actually think he's been a good hire. I've been happy with him. He's a refreshing change from the previous regime, so and I think he's done a decent job. I think his best coaching was last year during that 5-game winning streak when they had a pretty bad start, and they really righted the ship. And then, unfortunately, Cousins, of course, got injured and all that happened. We know the story. And I think he's been a good choice. I think that Zelgab makes a good point on the show about, he was hired on to develop a quarterback. And obviously they have who they believe is their quarterback of the future. So I think he needs one more year, I believe, to actually say, okay, let's extend him. So that's just my kind of initial reaction to that. I like it. I like the new GM, and I like the coach, but I just think maybe another year just to see if we can, get some development on McCarthy, see how that works out. His pedigree, I think as a coach and all that stuff. And the best years of Cousins, I think, were with O'Connell. But I think he's been brought on for that purpose. And I think he still has to prove that. So I'd say another year. That's just my gut to that. I wouldn't be upset if they extended him. Sure. But I just think, I think next year is probably the more appropriate time. That's just my gut.
It does feel like that they're kind of building something beyond 2024. Not that this season is completely irrelevant, right? But there seems to be a little bit of a stepping stone year kind of going into this year and then next season with a bunch of cap space, and maybe JJ McCarthy has started by then, and there's another process that's going, but kind of feels like a stepping stone year. Scott, how about you, man? Do you kind of look at this summer as the time to extend Kevin O'Connell? Or are you like Adam, maybe you want to let this season play out a little bit? When would you like to see him extended?
I'm actually on the opposite side of the coin. I actually think that right now would be the time to extend him for a couple of reasons. One, you mentioned that his pedigree. He was a wonderful coaching hire. The change of pace was huge for me as a Vikings fan.
Yes.
I was tired of the Zim regime being fourth and two, or 4th and 3, and just inside the 30 and kick a field goal. Like his first drive as head coach, when he went for it on that 4th down, I was like, "This is our guy. This is our guy."
Oh yeah, good point.
However, I got some statistical points. He is actually tied with Denny Green at 20-14 for the Vikings' best record as a head coach throughout the first 2 years.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
I think part of it, I mean, and it hasn't fully been his roster yet. So he, through injury, through not having his own roster, he's tied Vikings coaching record for the most wins through the first 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe there's some merit in there. And then what, as you guys mentioned earlier, he's got his quarterback of the future in McCarthy, for top 10 pick. It makes sense that way as well, to just extend him, because he's hitched his horse to McCarthy. McCarthy's going to be here for 4 years. I don't see an issue with extending him. He's got the wins. He's going to be with his quarterback. You don't want to put in a new coach into a situation with someone else's quarterback. I mean, just like he had to come into. So as long as McCarthy's there and he's winning, I have no issue extending him now. But do it now while we got the cap space. JJ signed. The only other one I would like to see signed is Darisaw. So just get the deal done. The high end coaches are making $7.5 million a year. I think the Andy Reid extension just happened, and that's right about where he's at. So I mean, I would see in the $4 to $5 million range a year after his contract's up would be a nice sweet spot to be in.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good points of with Denny Green and what Zimmer was able to do. Both those guys were at different paths for sure, but I think with Kevin O'Connell, with what he's been able to do with so many, last year at least, with, I know the batch of quarterbacks record-wise didn't work out, but he still was able to, put up some decent offensive numbers there, and I think the wheels just mostly fell off that team by the time Cousins went out, and they ran out of magic carpet rides, or ran out of a magic carpet ride. So we'll see what happens. I think there's going to get extended too. Going to be an interesting summer here for the Vikings. Taking a look at the quarterback timeline here, Adam. I mean, do you look at JJ McCarthy as taking over at some point this season? When do you want to see him sit all year? What's your kind of timeline plan for JJ as the starting quarterback of the Vikings?
No, excellent question. I mean, I think it depends on how the season unfolds. I think it's got to be part of it. I mean, their bye is, I think it's week 6. So there's going to be 5. I'm going to see how they get out of the gate. I'd like to see them start out better than last year. They were turning the ball over way too much early last year. Hopefully that won't happen this coming year. And they got a tough schedule, obviously, on the road against the Giants. And then I think it's week 2 against the Niners at home, I want to say. And then they got to go on the Pack on the road. So we'll see and how Darnold plays during those 5 games. I personally think that McCarthy should sit the entire year. I think he's been groomed for this. I like his demeanor. I like his personality. I think he handles the media well. I feel like he's pretty solid. But the fact is, physically, he's 21 years old. And you're going to throw him in there, and I just have some concern about him playing right away, just from the physical point of view. So personally, I'd say, hey, let's have him sit for the entire year. But if they're not playing well and Darnold's not playing well early in the season, I think after that bye, you might see McCarthy actually coming in and play. So ideally, I'd say let him sit, let him physically mature some, and then let him loose in 2025. That's just my instincts. I'm old school in that regard. You want to see him play right away, I think. You want him to start immediately, but it's like, hold on. So, but anyway, that's my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to see more of a competition battle, and I still think you'll get that right in training camp, but it might be more of a slower burn for JJ McCarthy. And I think that's what I've kind of figured out here in the last few weeks. I knew that was kind of always there, but I thought maybe he could leapfrog him at training camp. I doubt that's going to take place. You bring up a point of the schedule being tough. Of you have San Francisco, you have Houston, you have Green Bay, you're in London. You kind of have one of those earlier buys this year too. So from week 7 through the rest of the year, there won't be a bye week. So they got to kind of figure out a good soft spot to bring him in. They don't want to throw him into the Wolves, even if they start the 1-4 in the first 5 games. So they got to figure out the best timeline to do it, and maybe Sam Darnold can hold down the fort here for a little bit too.
I believe
Scott, how
in
about
Darnold. I like Darnold. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I believe
in.
I think from that game in 2021 when they played the Panthers, and he brought them back, and the Vikings won in overtime. If you remember that game, the Panthers, they dropped 7 balls that Darnold and guys were wide open. He was leading guys well. I actually think Darnold has a chance of being somewhat effective. So, but yeah, anyway, go ahead.
No, you're good. I mean, he's definitely, I think, better than what he was when he first came in to the Jets. And, he's with Carolina. That was a dumpster fire, and spent some time with Kyle Shanahan last year. I think that was probably beneficial. And even with all that stuff that's happened to him, he still lands, a 1-year, $10 million contract, which is still saying something that maybe this is probably his last crack to show that he can be a viable starting quarterback. But he's definitely better than he was when he first got drafted in 2018.
I think you raised a totally good point. $10 million. Other teams were interested too. If you're getting $10 million, wasn't just purely going to be a backup, So,
Scott, how about you, man? When do you want to see JJ McCarthy take over as the starting quarterback of the Vikings?
I mean, from a fan standpoint, I would love to see him in because that would just be exciting. However, from a realistic standpoint and the success of the franchise, I'm the same. I would like to see him ideally start the beginning of next year. Week 18 versus the Lions, I actually think might not be a bad spot either, because I feel that both the Lions and Vikings might not be playing for much that week. And so you're on the road versus division rival. If they're whether Vikings are out for record wise or in it, because I'm actually a believer in Darnold as well. I actually think Darnold has the ability to do things. His best wide receiver he's had in his career was a young DJ Moore. So not even veteran DJ Moore. And the next best guy he's had was Jamison Crowder, who he got almost to 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Like, he can do something. He hasn't had the weapons, and now he's got JJ and Addison. So I believe in Darnold. So I'm in the camp not to rush McCarthy. If the opportunity presents itself, like a week 17, 18 against the Lions on the road, kind of get that environment, get the jitters out that season, shake it out when it's either they're not playing for anything, whether they're in the playoffs, the Lions are locked up, whatever. That's a realistic scenario. I wouldn't mind seeing him there. Otherwise, exactly what he was saying. I'd like to see him sit majority of the year, mature. He's 21. Was the youngest quarterback in the draft. Let him learn and let him come in like a Patrick Mahomes. For God forbid Jordan Love and the Packers having another quarterback that
I'm still not buying him.
I'm with you, because everyone wants to ignore the first half of the year, but that still exists.
Yeah.
So he had a fantastic second half of the year, but also a lot of that was thanks to Aaron Jones, who's now on our beautiful team. And so I'm actually not just because it's the Pack. I'm not a believer in Jordan Love, but he's better than he would have been had he started right away. So I am for McCarthy sitting. This is an opportunity that needs to be handled right and not rushed. Vikings can compete, and even if they compete and they lose, we've been losing for a long time. We just won before we die, but I don't think that might be now. But yeah, I'm for him starting late this year, beginning of next year. However, if Darnold does not perform, week 9 would be my preference, because that's against Indianapolis. The schedule gets much softer after that. Even after the bye week, there's the short game that's our Thursday night game at the Rams. That's a short prep week. So. That's a short prep week. Ideally that's not when you want to throw them in. And then I forget who the week 8 opponent is, but I remember that's not ideal. I think at the Colts or versus the Colts, week 9 would probably be the most ideal if Darnold's not performing.
I have an idea too. How about they blow a team out once? Just blow one team out or two, and then he gets some garbage time in the fourth quarter and gets one or two possessions. How about that?
How about week 1 when I'm in New York for that game?
Right.
Week 1, blow them
Good
out.
for you.
Get to see it all week 1. I would love that.
That'd be preferred.
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, you guys will both get to go to road games. You'll obviously, Adam, you'll get to go to LA, and Scott, you'll be there week 1. Daniel Jones, or maybe even my guy Drew Lock. We'll see who's starting at quarterback for the Giants.
I think Daniel Jones has it until he drops about 2 fumbles and an interception. So Daboll's another wonderful coach out there in the NFL, and I think he has realistic expectations that Drew Lock and Daniel Jones are not the answer. So I don't think he's going to rush to drop Jones to put in Lock when there's not that much of improvement.
I just paid him $40 million a year. Thank you, Ed Donatel.
Ed
Donatel. He should give a portion of his check every year to Donatel for that contract.
At least a thank you note or like a Christmas card every year, right? Like at the very least, got to do something like that.
Yes,
absolutely.
Well, conversely, Adam, which player on the Vikings defense this year? There's been a lot of turnover. Brian Flores is sticking around, which is a good thing.
But
which player on the Vikings defense are you most excited to watch this year?
It's the rookie. It's Turner. I want to see how Turner plays. I mean, I did a lot of, I geeked out on the draft, of course, and I didn't really kind of expect him to be there or anything, but that run on offensive players, it was like, I actually like that. I don't think there's a single move this offseason that they've made, and I am notoriously critical of them, that I would disagree with. And moving up to get Dallas Turner and looking at his film, I mean, this guy, what I was sold on with him was when I saw that Alabama-Tennessee game, and they put Turner in coverage on a wide receiver, and he made a play on the guy. It's like, this guy's 250 pounds, 247, whatever. The numbers are, I mean, I think he's a pretty good. I'm more excited about him, frankly, right now than I am McCarthy, because I think he's going to make a contribution right away. So for me, him, and I'd say an honorable mention, and this is kind of a dark horse here, is I want to see how that guy Blackman plays in the secondary, who they drafted out of USC, just because their secondary has, and I think a lot of teams struggle with this. It's like offensive line. I think a lot of teams struggle with this, but their secondary has been problematic in the past, and I want to see how that guy develops. And again, they always say the rookie year to the second year, that's the most development you have as a player. Well, I kind of expect him to get some playing time and be decent, but I think Turner's the guy I'm most excited about. I think he'll take the sting out of losing a Hunter a little bit. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, even though they lose Daniil Hunter in free agency, it feels like getting Grenard, getting Dallas Turner, hopefully Van Ginkel, if the foot holds up, should be healthy by the start of the season. They've replaced one really elite pass rusher with 3, at the very least, very good pass rushers. They've kind of spread out that wealth and makes life easier. The cornerback room is easily their thinnest and probably, your biggest gulp moment when you're going to watch those guys. But someone has to emerge, right? I think it's just like a math game. And is it Blackman?
I've said that for years. Mike Hughes has to emerge.
So, I know.
Or Gladney, he's not even around anymore. It's unbelievable. The first round. It's like, when is one of these guys going to be like a decent cornerback? It's incredible.
It's definitely the hardest position to play in the NFL in today's game, right? With just like quarterbacks and offense and receivers getting everything.
The rules.
It's hard to be an effective cornerback in 2024, but to your point, hopefully someone can do it. Scott, how about you, man? I know you're rocking the Ivan Pace jersey today. Is that your guy? Do you want to see another big leap from year 1 to year 2? Which players in the defense are you excited to watch?
You are correct. There's a reason why I'm wearing the Ivan Pace jersey. I believed in him last year, buying the 4-0. I'm a big draft nerd, the same, so I was geeking out for Dallas Turner, and of course, I'm excited for his ability. And actually, my pro comp for him is an undersized Khalil Mack. The stiff arm that he has and the pop that he's got, everything that I see in Turner, I saw Khalil Mack coming out of Buffalo. However, for Pace for last year, there were a lot of like 5th, 6th round comps, and I actually thought that a lot of his negatives were unfair, like the gap discipline, coming in the hole, hitting straight up. His athleticism's off the table, as we know, and I think because he was undersized and so athletic, a lot of scouts were looking for something that was wrong. They're going to look, they're going to find. So last year, I thought he was a end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th round pick. And when he fell as a undrafted free agent, I thought we won the draft. We could have not drafted anybody else, and I would have been happy because I mean, he watching him on tape was just fantastic. And then this year,
Yeah.
uh, now he's taken that step from undrafted free agent to starter in 1 year. Now he's got, as the guys you mentioned earlier, Van Ginkel, Grenard,
Yeah.
Cashman, the Turner, they're all around him. Now he gets to lead a potentially elite group of guys. So he did well. He was in the top 40-ish linebackers in tackles and performance last year, and top 10 in forced turnovers at a linebacker position. Without that support, we had a much weaker linebacker group last year because I don't consider Daniil a linebacker. He's a DN
Right.
that kind of stood up in the system.
Mm.
So absolutely weaker linebacker system. So he's now got guys around him who other teams have to account for, and I think that's going to be huge. And I'm hoping he can, and watching and hoping he can take that next step and potentially lead this group to be an elite level and a top 10 defense.
Yeah. Their front seven is it's definitely improved. It's just got more depth.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's just more. I mean, I don't look at it as a starting 11. It's got to be like 17 to 19 guys who can actually play some,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I agree with you. I think their front seven is going to be much. And I love Pay. The green dot, I mean, the guy's totally smart. Sometimes his size is a bit of a concern. He'll get swallowed up by a guard on occasion, but I'm excited about him too. Absolutely.
And a point on that with the getting swallowed up by the guards, if you watched a lot of tape, even when he's getting swallowed up by a guard, he's hitting that hole hard enough to make that
Yeah.
guard change, and it's changing the guard's position, and it's
Yep.
closing the gap on the backside. So he may not be making the tackle, but he's making a play, and it's allowing other people to make those tackles and force on the outside. So things you could,
Football.
Yeah,
yes.
seriously.
Yes.
Hell yeah. Well, guys, before we wrap up here on Vent Line, any last takes, Adam? Any shout outs you'd love to give? Floor is yours, man.
Oh, I appreciate that. Like to say, hey, to my brother, hopefully he's watching this, lifelong Chief fan. He remembers Super Bowl IV. So
Wow.
lifelong Chief fan. But to him, and I guess last take, I mean, I guess my expectations for this season, I mean, I think that they, I think they're going to hover around 500, probably like a lot of teams. But I don't know. I just feel like they're setting something up for 2025, and they may surprise me. I mean, they may, injuries just don't turn the ball over quite as much, as they did early in the season. I think if they can do that, they'll be in games. So I think the roster is getting deeper, So, and one final point too. Aren't you glad you don't live in Green Bay, Wisconsin?
Hell yeah. That is not where I want to be. Amen.
Okay.
Love that. Absolutely. Scott, how about you, man? Any last takes? Any shout outs you'd love to give your Vent Line?
I mean, as far as shout outs go, I mean, all my family in the Midwest. I mean, most of my family is actually Packers fans in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Oof.
So
I went to Memorial. I graduated from Memorial, just to let you know.
Okay, I know exactly where that's at, ironically.
Okay.
But as far as interesting takes, and I've posted some fantasy stuff on social medias and whatnot. These are non-Vikings, but I have Dallas Turner as defensive rookie of the year. I have Bryce Young as comeback player of the year because his coordinator worked with Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. And both of them had elite years that year, and I believe at least one, if not both, one comeback or a were in the running for those awards the year that they had him. So I think this is going to be a much improved Bryce Young. And my sleeper and kind of out there take for the year is Isaiah Pacheco will win Offensive Player of the Year for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
He's averaging 5.5 yards a carry, and now he doesn't have this Jerick McKinnon usage taken away in the pass game.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to start getting that full load and complement. And with Brown on the outside too, teams can't stack the box. So if he can put up 1,200 yards, double-digit touchdowns, with adding another 400-500 yards in receiving, which, by the way, I've done the numbers. That's just extending his averages out to a full offensive player of the year level. That's where he should be at. Is it double-digit touchdowns, 1,200 yards, and 400 to 500 receiving yards? I could absolutely see him being offensive player of the year, not MVP, because
Right.
that's basically a quarterback award, but offensive player of the year. If JJ doesn't hit 2K, then Isaiah Pacheco is my pick for offensive player of the year.
I like him, but I don't know about that running style and his health. We'll see.
Uh,
My brother may disagree with you on that, but he's good. There's no doubt about it. He's a talent, obviously.
can't plan for injuries, so you look at the best case scenario when everyone's healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's a fun player to watch. He's awesome.
Yeah.
You can fun. I love it though. It's a good hot take. Dudes, thank you so much for joining Vent Line. Appreciate you guys. Great stuff here. If anyone wants to join a future episode, you can hit me up. It's Vikings Vent Line at gmail.com. For Adam and Scott, I'm Declan Goff. We'll be talking at you on Monday.
Thank you so much.